Hey, folks. So it is Thursday evening, 8 o'clock. Really excited to see you guys here. I can tell that some of you are really interested about this conversation. I'm going to give it a second for folks to get on in the room. I'm super excited because I get to introduce you guys to some new people, some old friends of mine, some great topics and conversation. And then bridge a lot of the gaps between things that I care about, things that I love, and things that are happening back home that have made national news. Hey, what's up, Christy? How are you? I'm hoping, so I logged in. Hey, Amanda, I logged in and there was already a comment from 8:09 this morning. And I guess the person was replying to like the subject that I put up, which is, like why white people fear critical race theory and or anything regarding white privilege. And somebody commented and said, I fear all Nazi propaganda. And I immediately wanted to say, you do know that the Nazis were white, but it's okay. So we're going to talk about all this. What's up, Jamie? Hey, Sherry. Hey, Almighty. How is everybody? So I'm gonna kind of give you a little bit. I'm waiting on a couple of more guests to join. Yay, Nancy! I'm glad you did make it on time. Melinda said, "Lord, already." I know it's a lot, right? So for those of you guys who, if you haven't been under a rock, you know what's been going on in Sullivan County, Tennessee, and Northeast Tennessee around Coach Hawn, and I wanted to. I reached out a while back, but they were being bombarded, so like the last few weeks, as you know, we've made national news. Everything from all the national outlets have been watching this thing unfolding in our area, and it was really important to me, if I could, to be able to kind of share some of this with you guys. Hey, what's up, Teresa? And so I'm very grateful that Kyla and Matt have taken their time out to share with little old me and all of you what's been going on, because I feel like this is really, really important. I think we have to pay attention to what's happening in the GOP. We have to pay attention to what's happening all across the state of Tennessee and what's happening in the world of change. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you first to Coach Matt Hawn and also Kyla Janae Lacey, who is a spoken word poet, artist, and who got kind of wrangled into the middle of this situation. And that's something that I really do want to talk about too, is why is your voice only relevant because a white dude made it so. So we're going to talk about that too. But this is Coach Hawn. And
hi, everybody.
So welcome, everybody, you guys. Thank you all. I know you got to be exhausted. It's a whirlwind. So I appreciate you all taking the time to join me tonight. For those of you guys who aren't aware, let me just give you a snippet. My understanding, Coach Hawn, you teach contemporary issues along with another class in Sullivan County school system. And in that, you touch on, contemporary issues are going to be a little controversial sometimes, right, a little emotional sometimes, but that's the point. Now tell me the age group of the kids that you teach in that course, in that class.
It's an upper level, so it's a junior and senior class.
Okay, so we're not talking about babies. Amanda Joe says, hey, Coach, miss you, class 2010.
No. Who said that?
Amanda Joe.
Oh, hey, Amanda. Hey.
And so like so I'm from Bristol, grew up in Sullivan County. I was impressed just like because I heard you earlier and you said, I've been following Ta-Nehisi Coates for a while and following his career. And I immediately wanted to go, where did you come from? Because most of the folks in our area, he's not their cup of tea. It's not the type of thing. So what kind of got you interested in these types of conversations and teaching contemporary issues?
Yeah, I've been teaching contemporary issues for over a decade. And so in order to do my job properly, I have to research, I have to bring relevant materials to class. And I was watching a talk show where Mr. Coates was promoting Between the World and Me. And I just got sucked into his interview and I was like, oh God, I got to read that. And so I did. And since then I've been following his career, and then I saw Kyla's poem and got sucked into there too. And so So,
Yeah, so we're going to talk about that. I love the fact that I love challenging conversations. To me, in the discomfort is where growth happens. So if you're not having conversations about touchy subjects, people always say, don't talk about religion, don't talk about politics, don't talk about whatever. And I'm like, no, talk about all those things, please. Because that's how we grow and that's how we expand. So I think that's awesome. So here's what I understand is that you've touched on everything from, I think last year was the first, like when the Kyle Rittenhouse was when you first shared some information and just kind of showed the disparity in terms of how he was treated walking down the street with a gun in his hand and shooting two people versus people of color. And then the insurrection, you kind of weren't really sure how to kind of cover that. And so you covered the election, you've covered LGBTQ issues and
climate change. Yeah. The Me Too movement, all these difficult subjects. So
you've covered
for years. I've been doing this for years. Yeah.
Okay. So for over a decade. And this is the one time that that you received a reprimand, and then on the same day, if I understand correctly, on the same day that the Tennessee legislature passed their law banning what they consider to be, critical race theory, you got a letter saying you were suspended without pay for sharing the Ta-Nehisi Coates article, which for those of you guys who didn't see it, this is the article. It's the first white president. The foundation of Donald Trump's presidency is the negation of Barack Obama's legacy. And basically that article was saying, hey, listen, Trump got elected off the grievances of white people, right? And that was an article that you shared. And then Kyla's poem, which, okay, so let me just say this, my lady. I know it is your poem, but I'm going to play it. I saw you earlier going, and I'll take you off the screen if you want me to. But let me share this with you because I grew up where Matt is from, right? Where Matt's at. It is a region that is 91 to 97% white, depending upon what county you're in. I'm going to talk to you about parts of your poem that really resonated with me. When you said, I'm the black girl that the white guy wants to have sex with, but only because I'm pretty for a black girl. I was like, girl, if you don't stop, because I know what that was like. Because when I grew up and I went to Tennessee High, white guys wouldn't date you publicly. Oh, but they would hit you up privately, right? And so it really resonated with me. So Jamie Ferris, I love it. She said it's powerful. I loved it. She asked me for a link and I posted it yesterday. So the status right now, Coach Hawn, is that you were suspended without pay. So right now you're unemployed.
Correct.
You had a hearing last week and they're going to make that decision around like October 10th.
October 10th or 11th right now. Yeah.
Now, I'm just going to tell people this. You didn't tell me to do this. I heard you talk about, I guess your family members had created this, and I'm going to share this because I think that it's important. We always talk about supporting teachers. So if you would like to support Coach Hawn while he is unemployed, this is his GoFundMe. I love teachers who believe in teaching truth and challenging students and expanding what they're exposed to. And it takes a lot for you to be in the position that you are. So I'm grateful. And what I hope is that other people will support you and help carry you and your family through until this is all resolved. And hopefully you're back in the classroom where you can make difference.
Thank you, Danny. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome. I mean, that's where we want you to be. It's where I would want you to be. So here's the thing. In addition to this article, you played Kyla's poem, which tell me a little bit about the poem, Kyla. Tell the people a little bit about you and when you wrote it and kind of what made you write this piece.
The poem was written in 2014. It was about 2 years outside of the murder of Trayvon Martin. And I wrote it when I lived 20 minutes away from where Trayvon Martin was murdered. So it was a really interesting time in Central Florida. And there was, just a lot of chatter on Facebook. I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood. I don't know the exact demographics, but it was pretty white growing up. And a lot of people that I grew up with didn't think because they were outwardly racist, that they didn't have racist ideologies or, biases.
Yes.
And so it actually, now that I think about it, kind of stemmed from this post on Facebook about white privilege and, some of the experiences that I was having with communicating with people I went to school with. And so then it just kind of carried on from there.
Yeah, I can relate. So in 2018, I did a Facebook Live entitled Dear White Associates. And in parentheses, it said, because you're not my friend if this is you. And it happened because the morning after the new Nike commercial came out with Colin Kaepernick, people that I went to school with, right, were putting up all of these memes and comparing Pat Tillman and all of these things. And it riled me up, and I went live, and I basically was talking about, listen, if you're upset because he took a knee, understand that that's his American right to do so. You don't have to like it. You don't have to think that it's okay. You don't got to support it. And I said, listen, I don't think it's right that the KKK marches down the street with like white sheets and tiki torches, but it's their right to do so. But
they're just crazy, right? Like they're laughable. They're easy to write off by the general public as delusional, even if you're slightly related to somebody in the KKK.
Well, but get this. So Southwest Virginia, so Northeast Tennessee, Southwest Virginia is that whole region where I'm from, right? Just 3, maybe 4 weeks ago, the KKK went riding through Russell and Scott County, passing out Ziploc bags with corn and KKK flyers in it, right? But people discount it, and they think because they don't do something that overt, that somehow they're not supporting racism or white privilege. And they confuse classism with racism.
Right. Absolutely.
Right.
And then with Colin Kaepernick, there is the added complex of Black athletes having to be grateful for, their position in life, as if they have to trade their humanity for their riches. Like you can't talk about racism. You can't highlight racism. I mean, LeBron James, for instance.
Oh, shut up and dribble.
Right, exactly. Right. Because there is this ingrained need to make Black people feel grateful that they are rich or are well off, as if they've contributed in some way to that person's success.
Right, exactly. And so, I was told, so one of the things that I don't talk about a whole lot is, so when I went home and I did this whole healthcare protest and slept outside of a hospital and all of that, there were a lot of things that transpired, and there were threats that were made and things like that. There was actually someone that I went to school with who threatened me and my mom, our physical well-being, told me to shut up, stop talking about certain politicians, called me nigger, called me half-breed, called me wannabe nigger, called me a half-bred dog. And this is like in the last year, right? And like I went back home and I testified in front of a grand jury. And my thing is people weren't sure they were gonna indict, but they did. And we're still waiting on everything to be resolved. So I can't talk about what happened in the grand jury, but I can say that there's an indictment. And the reason why that was important to me to do, and I hope to goodness I don't get emotional, but here's the reason that was important for me to do, is you do not get to threaten my livelihood or the life of my mother. You don't get to threaten my person for exercising what is absolutely my right to do. And these people I was living in Sullivan County. This is a Sullivan County commissioner. I'm supposed to call you out, sir. I'm supposed to redress my grievances with you. And this is what was said to me. We are tired of you thinking you've become something. Oh yeah. See? Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, I get it. And then to tell me that racism is not an issue. You think it's not an issue because you live in a region where there aren't enough Black people to really like organize and have the voice matter. And if they do, they risk everything because white people control the employment, the housing, the education, right? So you make the wrong people angry and you're done for. So what do? Do you give up your Blackness and your right to address that in exchange for whatever livelihood you can obtain? So before I go any further, I want to share this poem. And before I share it, let me just say this. When Coach Hawn shared this in class, He did take out the curse words. Kyla is a girl after my own heart. We will drop an F-bomb in a minute. Y'all already know that because you follow me. So let me just say, he cut those words out. There was anything that
I tried to.
Yeah,
I tried to. I was not very successful.
Well,
because it's such a powerful piece that I didn't take into account that whenever I watch it, no matter if I've seen it once or I've seen it 100 times, you get sucked into it, you know?
Yes. But
and so
there are studies that show that profanity is sometimes the only thing that is appropriate, and that it is the thing that most accurately expresses our emotion. You know, there used to be this YouTube video of Bobby Knight saying the word fuck, and he said it like in all these different expressions, and it was like fuck, and it was like but you knew exactly what he was feeling,
right, saying
the same word. And so sometimes that's really important to have, you know what I mean? So for those of you guys, and by the way, if y'all don't think that these teenagers, juniors and seniors hear and say this, and even worse, I don't know what rock you live under, because you know they do. So without further ado, this is White Privilege. And then I'm going to bring on another friend of mine who's an incredible poet and curator and individual, Dasana Hanu, and Blues is late, but we'll just wait till he gets here. And I'll explain why I wanted them to be a part of this conversation as well. So without further ado, Kyla, I'm going to leave you up unless you just want me to take you down.
I'm just going to put my sound on pause. I mean,
okay, that works. So this is White Privilege by Kyla Janae Lacey. And this is what all the to-do is about, folks. Well, a lot of what it's to do about. Here we go.
We learned your French. We learned your English, your Spanish, your Dutch, your Portuguese, your German. You learned our nothing. You called us stupid. That's white privilege. And I'm sure it probably hurts for you to hear those two words, kind of like gunshots and explosions from those commissioned to protect you, whisking past your ears. What is white privilege? It is the only 5 decades of legal acknowledgement expected to correct 400 years of white transgression. It is crack versus cocaine. Blacks receiving almost 20% longer sentences for the same exact offenses, like, for instance, a black man without a record is less likely to get a job than a white felon. Well, maybe it's because we're lazy and we don't work hard enough. Like, what the fuck? 400 years in the same field literally is an incredible resume builder. It is Katrina answering the government's prayers of eugenics, Dick Cheney going fishing the next day, Condoleezza on a shopping spree, Bush in San Diego. But Kanye is the one you call crazy because, like, it only took the USA 2 days to get aid to Asia, but 5 for FEMA to get to Canal Street and Esplanade. It is the one black kid who beat the shit out of the odds, but only thanks to Sandra Bullock, Michelle Pfeiffer, and the White Shadow, so now we all can make it. It is the only time thousands of white people are cheering for the black kid to win is in a stadium. It is you looking at me crazy if I told you to go back to Europe, even though we didn't have a say and your great-grandparents came here voluntarily. It is you all of a sudden having a problem with immigration, like this isn't even your nation. How the hell do you discover some shit that wasn't even missing to begin with? You've Columbused our traditions. Had white girls twerking in high definition with multicolored hair and purple nails, but it was ghetto when we did it. Or am I making you uncomfortable? Try a cramped slave ship. Oh wait, slavery is over now. It's just called the prison system, because, like, you're not racist because you don't use the N-word, but y'all use niggas every day. What is white privilege? It is the acceptance of bombs over Baghdad but not over Boston. It is European history being taught as a major and African as an elective. It is learning about my people only 28 days. Like, I'm not black every fucking second. It is every white boy who wants to fuck my brains out, not because I'm pretty, but because I'm pretty for a black girl. Is people thinking that Africa is one nation. It is the waving of the Confederate flag like you didn't lose the battle and then telling us to get over slavery. It is people saying that black people destroyed neighborhoods but forgetting that white people have destroyed continents. It is every time I bring up my plight, some white man has to tell me that I'm crazy, but is kind enough to praise my English or say that we are all given the same opportunities, even though he has a family history of wealth and I don't even know my family history at all. It is the justification of police brutality. Like, what did that person do? Well, I'm sure it doesn't hurt as much when the victim doesn't look like you. It's people thinking that affirmative action is an unfair advantage instead of keeping the qualified from being unfairly disadvantaged, or throwing out a qualified applicant because their name sounded too African American. It is Newports imported into black communities, but black black boys exported for weed, and his big plastic asses are called fat when we naturally have them, is an Australian woman whose new classic of rap music is everyone who hears this poem dismisses all this truth I just spit as reverse racism. That is white privilege.
Yes, all of that and then some. I have watched this repeatedly. And the reason why, so like, you know the song and you know blues. I know dope spoken word artists, but every time you hear something that resonates, and that's what this art form is. And so first, let me just point this out, right, to the damn GOP in Tennessee, who thinks that this is critical race theory. If you do not know the difference between a scientific theory and art, I would submit that your law is actually void due to vagueness. Right? There is such a thing. If you make a law that is so vague, you cannot define or distinguish it, then it is in fact void. I think it's a null and void law, right? And I think it's important that during this time, we stand up and really talk about these things, because if not, if we allow laws to be written that restrict our art and our expression, we really have lost the First Amendment, folks. We really have, and we cannot do that. So everybody's like, wow, that's incredible. Everybody's got little praise hands. I was snapping my ass off. But you said something that I want to point out. So I'm biracial, as y'all know, and my mom is white, my dad is black. And the other day, it was like a week or so ago, and I was going to do an African ancestry, right? Because I was like, I want to know. Well, here's what I learned, that because my mother is white, which in the state of Tennessee, they will try to make you white if your mom is white. But because my mom is white, I can't take a DNA test and find out my African heritage. I have to get my brothers to do it, because for women, the way the DNA is passed down, the mitochondrial DNA, it's from your maternal side. So if I want to know, when you said I don't even know my family history, it struck another chord with me, because I was like, dang, I got to ask my brothers to find out. You know what I mean? And so it was something else that just really resonated with me. So you played this piece, and here's what I understand happened, Coach Hawn. You put it in this classroom. You have a group chat or something, and you had put images from this material, or is it from this, or maybe it was from the Kyle Rittenhouse? Is that the one that you?
That was from the Kyle Rittenhouse. Yeah, we were in 100% in-person learning at the time, so I was in the classroom with the students and played her poem.
Okay, and so what happened after that? What was the big deal? Well, how did it become? You're suspended without pay.
So they claim that I am not showing varying viewpoints to her poem, and that the language was not appropriate. Do what, Kyla?
And it wasn't a credible source.
Right?
I want to be credible of her experience. Okay,
and then and then the language was inappropriate.
Okay.
And,
All right. So let's talk about this. So in your class, one of my questions is, do they ever offer you, when you discuss what you're going to do in contemporary issues, do they ever provide you with varying views of material on any of the subjects? No. Okay.
No. It's all up to me to bring the material in.
Okay, so they are saying to you as the teacher, listen, you're going to teach this class, right? You bring the material in, but we're going to require you to share varying points of view, but we have not defined for you what that must include, what that standard must be, and what sources it must come from, if they deem your sources uncredible, right? And
correct.
Not credible. Okay, so from what I hear, it's just because it's about white privilege. I'm going to bring to the stage with me, Dasana Hanu. Hey, Addie, I see you guys. Yeah. So hold on. And I'm bringing in Blues, Boris Rogers, who is another spoken word artist. So let me explain to you why I'm bringing all of these phenomenal people. So for those of you guys who don't know, I used to spit a little poetry back in the day. When I moved to Charlotte, I was going through a divorce, mad as hell. And, poetry is a great way to get that out. And when I got there, Blues is who nicknamed me Danny the Poet. Where were we at on South Tryon?
So original Blues.
Huh?
Oh my gosh.
We were at happy hour, right?
Yeah, happy hour.
That's where we were. And I had signed up for an open mic. It was my first time ever. And he introduced me as Danny the Poet, and it stuck after that. And I remember, one of the things that we talked about, like in slam competitions, like this guy. So for those of y'all watching, you are seeing some of the best artists I know and some of the best people I know. Blues has an Emmy. He does a ton of spoken word stuff for professional teams and in schools and in colleges. Dasana Hanu was a Harvard Fellow in 2015 and 2016, also curator, educator, teacher at college. And so I wanted to bring you two into the conversation because Kyla's poem has become a big part of this conversation around, she's not a credible source. And this poem's been around. Look, God, the sound shook his head already. And the poem's been around for 7 years, right? But it's only gotten this attention. Yeah, there's some feedback. Does anybody know where it's coming from?
I can't hear it.
You can't hear it? I can hear it.
I think it might be you, actually.
Does it go back? Is it still there? Nope. Gone away.
No, we're good. Yeah.
But so this is my thing. She brought this poem became relevant and got all of this attention. And Matt, you know where I'm going with this. So I appreciate you being right here. But why is it that you all feel that our voices are only our messages and our voices are only listened to, heard, or even discussed when they are validated by a white person, right? In this case, it happens to be a white male. I see this a lot. I saw a girl on TikTok, Middle Eastern girl. This was just the other day. And she's talking about how everybody in the media is talking about how right-wing Christianity looks a lot like the Taliban and how their ideologies kind of run parallel. And she said, I think it's great that people are finally talking about that. She said, but we've been saying that for years, but nobody cared until a white dude tweeted it, right? So I'm gonna give it a second. Blues and Dasan and Kyla, weigh in on that. And then Matt, I do want to hear your opinion on that. Why do you all think that is? Kyla, I'll let you go first.
Because white is the default. I mean, so it is a built-in it's a built-in credibility.
Yeah. If you're white, you're automatically credible.
Absolutely. I mean, and that even goes with the whole, I don't even want to say Karen because it's my mom's name, but Blues is laughing at me. But, that's how I feel about my Karen. But no, I mean, like, I think every Black woman for sure has a scenario, I should say, it has crossed paths with a white woman who has done something bad to them and then made themselves the victim. And, that's how society works. It's part of, just kind of how the things have been going.
Yeah. Blues?
I think a part of it too, if we look even at hip hop, when we stop talking about the self-destruction or misogynistic or whatever about each other as Black people and turn a light on something else, well, then it's not okay, right? It becomes the thing that, oh, what? No, you can't say that. Oh, you want to talk about how niggas shoot niggas? That's great. That's fantastic. White privilege. Oh, no. So, to what Kyla was saying, it's the credibility factor, but also it's a hard truth. And it's easier to, victim blame the victim when you don't want to face a hard truth. So yeah. And it's so weird that it took a white guy to make it pop, you know?
I want to interrupt. Like, I know Dasan's going to speak, but actually, blues. February of 2020, I was in Boston, and we know that Boston is kind of racist. And it was a long story short, but there was a thing with my hotel room, and they were saying that we didn't have this suite available. And I was like, you do have it available. I actually called Blues because he sounds like an old white guy.
My code switch is incredible.
This is a true story. And I had him call the hotel.
Yeah.
And sure enough, they had the rooms available. And it was a big deal. Like, let's just say they gave me a whole bunch of points and a free stay. But it was like, they literally did that. And this was last year. And I literally called Blues because his voice sounds like, you can't tell what he sounds like at the very least. And sure enough, because he sounded credible.
Yes. Yeah. And I can do that when I'm on the phone as well. But of course, that's because I'm quote unquote well-spoken. Right? Have any idea how many times during the protest I would be interviewed and do my lives, because I was broadcasting every day back then, and they were like, "Oh, you're so well spoken," and I was like, "So let me share this." Then I want to get to Dasan. So I put up a post today, and I said I'm debating on which look for tonight's broadcast, and one of them was like me with my natural lip gloss, and the other one was me with red lipstick. And the reason why I did that is, here's a true story. During the protest, we went to the FTC and we went up to Congress. It was myself and a group of 13 other people. We hand carried 30,000 local signatures to legislators opposing this medical monopoly that's been created back home. And I had to take a white county commissioner with me in order to get into the offices to be seen. And we were getting ready to go that day. And she was like, you look really good in that red lipstick. You should wear it. And I said, I can't. And she said, what do you mean? And I said, if I go in, because I tend to be very assertive. If I go in and I am assertive and I am wearing red lipstick and my hair is spiked up instead of curled, right? I will be the angry Black woman. And she was like, oh, no. And I said, the fuck, yes, I will. So here's what happened. True story. We went to see Marsha Blackburn's office, and Marsha Blackburn had said she was not available, right? But we could meet with her people. So we go in, we sit down. My back, there's a window behind me, and I'm facing two young staffers, right? But the window behind me, there's a white dude sitting at the desk, right? Who I found out later was, I guess, her chief of staff. And here's the thing. We sit down, they start to repeat to me rhetoric from this healthcare company, and it was their talking points. And I just set up and I said, so let me tell you what we're not going to do today. I did not come all the way to DC for you to regurgitate. And do you know, they called the white county commissioner after we left, said that I was fairly aggressive with the staff, that they were scared. And they didn't know she had them on speakerphone. They didn't know we recorded the phone call, which I don't have to tell you because it's a one-party consent state. So I have her chief of staff on the phone. And then I called him back. And he was like, do we know each other? I said, no, we don't. But you just called Angie Stanley saying that I was fairly aggressive. He said, I don't know that I said, yes, you did. I said, as a matter of fact, what you said was fairly aggressive. And I just want to make sure that we're clear about what happened. But this is what happens as Black women. And I'm high yellow, y'all. But even as this much melanin in my skin is too much. And for heaven forbid, I speak truth, and I speak it unapologetically and assertively, and with passion, and then it's a problem for people. Dasan, why do you think it took, and why do you think it often takes the co-signing of a white person to validate the expressions of Black people and in our experiences?
Well, it's the potential for it to get. It is the potential reach of that socialization. Like, if you take a voice as powerful as yours, and as powerful and as resonant as that poem is, like the way that poem is, in that particular video, even more so than like the original, like the first video that kind of made rounds, like Kyla's presence and the way that the poem is structured and delivered is even more resonant. Mm-hmm. That's one thing, like how accessible and resonant the poem is. It's another for that poem to be introduced and validated by a white person to potential to be done to white students.
Correct.
Because the distancing and the dismissal of that poem is a lot harder when there is an example and a model of someone who says that this is real, and that I can say this is a real thing. So there is, and on top of that is the patriarchy of it being a white male, because there's a little bit more maneuvering if it's a white woman.
Yes.
As a teacher who does that, there's still a little bit more. There's a little bit more at play. I think the response is heavier handed when it's a white male, because of what that means to white males in power.
Yes.
To have another white male validate this Black voice and this Black woman's voice to white students, because the impact and the lasting impact of that, the poem resonates itself, but to then have a cosign that is familiar to them or that they consider to be a valid voice means that you're empowering those folks to take that poem with them and carry that as valid. And that is scary.
So here's my thought. So Matt, first I want to ask you before I share this other piece. So did you think about sharing this piece? And at any point, or not just this piece, but the conversations that you have you thought about the potential jeopardy that you place yourself in? The fact that you might find yourself like you do right now, technically not unemployed, right? Because not fully fired, but not working and without pay, right? And here's what pisses me off about that. White police officers can kill a Black person, get suspended with pay. Your ass shared a poem and you can't even get paid. Like that to me, like if that does not demonstrate the systems and the way that they are built. So a white man can murder a Black person, be caught on video doing that shit and get paid while we wait for the process. You share a poem to educate, engage, and really expand your students, right? And the things that they're exposed to. And you find yourself getting less than what they get. So did you consider that ahead of time? And has it been worth it?
No, I didn't consider that. Like I said, I've been doing this for a long time. It's my job to introduce varying points of view to my students. And I believe that Kyla's experience is a very valid point of view. Mm-hmm. And so, no, I never thought that I would be here. Never thought that I would be here. But I'm very grateful to Kyla. She's been a great friend and she's been absolutely wonderful. But yeah, is it worth it? Yeah, I mean, it's it's worth it. Just say that. Yeah, it's very worth it.
I can just picking up off your vibes. I wouldn't expect you to say that it's not worth it. I believe you're sincere that it's worth it. Think for me, the thing that is so hard is to see people like you in the position that you're in. So Martina Carpenterstone wants to know, how did the students respond after being shown the piece?
I have a student. We had a really good discussion. I had a student share a personal experience about white privilege, and I picked up some of her poem, part of her poem, and I said, well, what does she mean by Columbus, our traditions?
Yes.
What does she mean by that? And we had a really, really good discussion about that.
Yeah.
So our students want to have these conversations. They really, really do. And they deserve to have them. And, I don't know what we're doing if we're not challenging our students to think critically about the world around them.
Right. And here's what I think. So when you say your students want to have your conversation, I think that's part of what older white people and especially older white men that run our systems, I think that's what they're afraid of. I think they know that a large portion of today's white children are not the same, and they have been exposed to different things compared to the way they were 40, 50 years ago. Mm-hmm. And white people's fear around critical race theory, or even teaching history from different perspectives than their own, right? The fear is that if people of color, Black, brown, indigenous people, begin to have a say in education and what is taught, they are afraid we will do to them what they did to us, right? And that's it. That's to everything, right? So, like, everybody's familiar with the lost cause. Everybody knows that the United Daughters of the Confederacy controlled textbooks in the Deep South. Like, we weren't frolicking in fucking fields, singing songs and shit, and Massa was not throwing us a picnic when we were slaves. Like, but that shit is literally in textbooks that they created. And so when people hear that, to deny that there has been an intentional whitewashing of history and controlling that in our education system, it is what it is. And I think they're really terrified, because here's the thing. No one is saying that you should be ashamed to be white. I don't think that. I don't think that you should feel guilty because you are white, right? What I do believe is that where that comes from is once you know, you're now held accountable, right? So if you become aware of the systems and that they are structured in your favor, and you are aware that historically speaking, it has been set up this way, at that point, if you choose to do nothing about it, then you feel ashamed and guilty. And maybe that's why we see some of the backlash that we do, is around bringing it there. So Kyla, how has this been for you? The last, I don't know, month or two. What's that been like for you?
I mean, parts of it have been a bit surreal. I mean, I'm not necessarily unaccustomed to the poem making some group uncomfortable, but on this scale, it's definitely been kind of like, oh, okay, here we are. The poem has gone viral a couple of times. So, having an experience with, it receiving scrutiny or receiving acclaim is not completely unusual. But like I said, at this scale, it's definitely a lot. And then to sit there and have 5 old white men view my art in a lens that isn't accustomed to, their vision anyway. But to sit there and defend a poem called White Privilege in front of a bunch of old white men is quite meta. So it was kind of an interesting experience to sit there and
yeah. Well, I mean, go ahead.
No, and I think one of the things was, I don't think that they anticipated me being actually as, educated as I am. I think they were expecting just to kind of be a run-of-the-mill, accidental, one-hit wonder, who knows. But I actually have a degree in history, so that's my field of study.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that happens. I know for me, going before to board of mayor and aldermen's, and or even sitting in congressmen's offices, I don't know why they are still surprised at our ability to articulate and to engage and to have discussions. That's one of the other things that resonated with me about your poem. I have friends that are African, right? And they most often speak 4, 5, 6 languages, right? They've learned everything because everybody at one point in time has tried to own damn Africa, right? So they've had to learn everybody else's language, while nobody else learned anything of theirs. And there's something missing in that. Wendell McKimmey, the poem is White Privilege. I played it at the beginning of the podcast, at this broadcast, so you can watch it when we get off, or I'll post the link up again. So hopefully at the end of this, what we find is you back in the classroom, right, Matt?
That's what I want to do. I want to go back to teaching. That's my calling. I love it.
Yeah. And what do you think? I want to know everybody's opinion about this, because Tennessee, for me, has become a scary place. It's why I'm left again, right? And one of those telltale signs when I knew it was really going in the wrong direction, when I saw Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens both move there, I was like, hell no, I'm good. Like, I'm out. Like, I left once, let me leave again. Because, you know, Candace Owens is the Uncle Ruckus of Black women.
Candace No Wins, as I like to call her.
Yes, she is no wins. And, you know, and I see so many people, like I had people tell me I needed to listen to her and I needed to whatever. And I'm thinking, yeah, but where I'm from, literally, that's what I've been told.
Happen too, though.
Yeah. And my thing is there's a reason. So when people say, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but the head of, well, she's the former head of the Tennessee Democratic Party, Mary, I can't think of her last name right now. She said at one point in time that Tennessee was a racist state. This was like a couple of years ago. And people raised holy hell, and she backtracked it. But when you wonder why people say that, it's conversations like this. It's this happening to Coach Hawn, who anybody who watches him and listens to him for a minute knows he's a great teacher, knows that he loves students and has, you know, their best interest at heart. You can pick up on that fairly quickly. We know shitty teachers when we see them, right? And right, Blues is like, absolutely. And so when I see things like this, I know that it has to do with the conversation being white privilege, that it comes back to race. It's not language. Because listen, most of those people sitting on those boards say that language and worse as soon as they leave the church on Sunday, right? Somebody got on my live the other day. This is no lie. And anybody who watches me knows I curse. And and somebody got on my live the other day and told me, well, I don't think there should be cussing on here because there are kids in the room. And I said, well, then turn me the fuck down, or watch me whenever you watch porn or whatever else you do when your kids ain't around, because this is not the time. Don't come to me thinking you're going to police me because you're listening to me in front of your kids. Sir, that be not my problem, right? But this idea of being able to police us and to police your pain and your expression, even in your art.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, a testament to there's more policing and, you know, about the poem than actual policing of racism, right? Like, and I'm supposed to be kind and gentle about something that isn't kind and gentle that I'm talking about.
Yes. Dasana Hanu, you and I have had conversations many a time over brunch. You are all about changing the systems. And I have always said, yeah, I'm good with that. And if you do not change the hearts and minds of the men and women who run the systems, the legal systems, the education systems, then nothing ever changes. And I think this is a really great example of that, because if we don't somehow change the hearts and minds of the men and women in, for example, the Tennessee legislature and many other states across the country, they will continue to change the system in a way that negates and hurts us. So my question is, how do we do both of those two things? Because I don't believe the civil rights movement did it, right? I think it was like a first down. Like, really, all it did was make being racist, which has been undone, by the way. It was not okay. It was not, you know, politically correct to be racist. It is again now. So what people did was they just went to being racist behind closed doors, right? Now they're back out, which I prefer you out, right? So I know you when I see you. But we didn't change the way those people feel. So how do we, I'll start with you, Dasan, how do we do both? How do we watch these systems, change these systems, and change the hearts and minds of the people running the system? Well,
for me, and you know, we have had these conversations a number of times. It's less about changing the hearts and minds of the people in charge of the system. It's about transforming, which is a different thing. To change it is to convince. And you know, it's a very widely known strategy that folks, you know, isolate their opposition and move the middle. Like, that's just the common strategy, because the position is that whoever you're opposition with, you're wasting time trying to change their mind. The thing about it is that if you move the middle, what you therefore end up doing is change the level of accountability. So then they then have to adapt and adjust, and so you can transform the way that they move and they act. I think what is necessary is to continue to hold to task, is to continue to make sure these messages are delivered. It's to continue to be aware, but also like, so it's, for instance, this conversation around validation by a white person is a necessary thing to acknowledge and call what it is, but it also is a necessary thing to have happen, right? Because we need to be able to speak without having to have the responsibility for white folks. But we also, so there is a necessary allyship that needs to happen.
Yes.
But our voices has to be considered in what that allyship looks like, right? Yes. Because this is to even the idea of saying that you didn't provide a varying viewpoint to Kyla's poem to a white teacher in a predominantly white school system,
correct,
is ridiculous, because the contrasting viewpoint is the lived lives of the folks that are in that class.
Yes.
So there's a total ignorance to any kind of cultural understanding about whiteness, to think that you have to then present them a favorable position of whiteness for this poem to exist, as if there's not a classroom full of white folks.
Or if that's not always what they're already learning.
Right. So
they're already living.
Right, are living in, like, this is their lived reality. So changing that, no. What happens is, and that's the danger, is that when that class becomes more aware of what they are in and it can give language to what they're observing, then you're accountable to their perspective and expectations. So you then have to do things differently, and it all gets transformed. That's the fear that you have, because at the point that young kids in Tennessee, Iowa, there are certain places that if young white kids have a different kind of consciousness in these places,
yes,
everything shifts.
Changes. Yes. And that's why I think people like Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens left California, because California, they aren't moving California. They are not shifting California, right? So they need to go in those battleground places where they're trying to kind of keep it what it is, because they know if you lose Tennessee, if you lose Kentucky, if you lose South Carolina, if you lose North Carolina, if you lose the hold in those regions, and those young people who literally are the future begin to understand the very different experiences that we all encounter as human beings and understand what it is, it all changes. And here's what I've often said. We always talk about the responsibility to change racism lies with white people, because it ain't us, right? It lies with white people to change it. And here's why I believe that is such a daunting task, is because do white people love humanity enough to give up their edge in life? And that's what we are asking them to do. We are asking them, if you knew you had a head start getting off the blocks, would you voluntarily give it up and level the playing field for everyone else? And I just don't know that they do. Blues, your response? I'm almost done. I'm on grandmama duty, y'all. Come here,
Bella. Listen. I know exactly what you're going through. I think I echo what Jason says. Shouts out to Jason for being one of the smartest people I've ever known in my entire life. But I would also say, if we're asking white people to give up their edge for a sense of humanity, this country was founded on oppressing humanity, oppressing everything that was beneath you. So that's a question that every time I hear them, you're asking someone to be un-American.
Yes.
I think that there lies that. So, and we go back to what you were saying, we we can only tell you that the racism lies within you. You know, we can't fix your problem, tell you what your problem is, but it's up to you to fix it. So I don't know. Like, it's a very difficult situation. But then you have poems like White Privilege that stand up and say, hey, here's your problem again. Here's your problem again. And again, a very American thing is to say, I don't have a problem. You do. Stop.
Yes. Yeah. If you all would just stop bringing it up, then it wouldn't still be here.
Yeah.
It would just go away.
And then who they want to tell me what Morgan Freeman, well, you need to listen to Morgan. If you don't get his old ass out my face, because Morgan is not living the life that we are all living. And I had somebody, I was on live one time, and somebody said, well, Danny, you're licensed and you have privilege. I do. I can own that. And at the same time, I experienced a double-edged sword. I grew up, especially where I'm in Northeast Tennessee, not black enough for black people, not white enough for white people. And then being raised by my white mom, and my dad died when I was 6 months old. I remember I used to sit in the mirror, no lie. I used to sit in the mirror and try to make my lips half the size they were, because your mother is your beauty ideal, right? And I didn't look like my mother in that respect. And I had assets and things and things that just didn't look like her. And so really struggling with that and not seeing myself represented in any of the people around me. Everywhere I looked, the teachers were white, the doctors were white, the nurses were white, everyone was white. And so it is but I think, okay, let me say this. I do think we are at that place where people like Coach Hawn and other people in positions where you get to have a say in students and young people and the catalyst for the future. And I do think that people have reached a place where we're not going back. I don't think that people are willing to go back. And I think that gives me hope. My grandbabies are intercontinental, right? Hispanic, black, white. We got a little bit of everything going on around here. We're just a good mix. And I want a world for them where this conversation is an educational moment, but not necessary for their life. It becomes something that we reflect on, but isn't needed for the change to happen, if that makes sense. Coach Hawn, Larry asked this question. He says, when you return to teaching, do you think, and I love that assumption, when you return to teaching, do you think there will be a massive magnifying glass on what you are teaching? And if so, how will you handle that?
Well, I certainly hope not. But I'm going to continue to do what I've always done. And I'm going to have difficult conversations with my students. And I'm going to trust them that they are able to handle these things. And I'm going to continue to do what I've always done, and that's just be a good teacher and bring in varying points of view and continue to have these difficult conversations, because I think that they are so very, 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 very important.
They really are. Once again, I want to thank you and Kyla and Blues and Dasan for joining me this evening. I know Matt and Kyla, you guys have been a little bit of everywhere and national shows and little bitty independent people like me. And what I love about this is that it's so important that, like, however many people watch here and however many people watch on the big, this is so important, because it's impacting all of our educational systems, or many of them across the country. This is a critical point where now is not the time to get lax, right? For those people who are happy just because Trump's not in office, listen, that was not the problem, right? That was just a loud representation of the problem, but the work still needs to be done. So let me just remind you all that right now, Coach Hawn is suspended without pay. And if you would like to help support him and his family, this is the GoFundMe that has been created. It is GoFundMe.com /F/stand-with-coach-Hawn. You can follow Kyla Lacey. I'm putting both your names together. Kyla Lacey on Twitter at Kyla_Lacey. And IG, Instagram is Kyla J. Lacey. And then, of course, I got Blues and Dasan Blues. And Dasana Hanu, both of them, and their IG is up. I appreciate everybody's conversation. She said, Larry said, let's get Tennessee straight before it gets like Texas. I don't know that it's not already like Texas. They have voted to stop teaching MLK, Susan B. Anthony. Holy geez. That's flabbergasting to me. I wish I could say surprising, but not really. Not for Texas anyway. Final thoughts. I will start with Dasan.
My only final thoughts are that, folks are really scared of what teaching really is. And there's a lack of understanding of what it takes to teach, not to just hold space in a classroom or to lecture to students, but to actually create a real learning environment. But we need it. We need to support teachers, and we need to support teaching. Those students are going to be way better off for having these kind of experiences than to not, and to silo them and isolate them and coddle them. So
got it. Blues.
The more you try to hide a thing, the more you try to put it away, bury it, the more this generation coming up is going to dig it up. If we've learned anything about what this generation does, is they find your old shit and will throw it in your face. So I would love for Coach Hawn to have his job back. And if he doesn't, there's going to be something out there more amazing for you, brother. But also know that there's a generation of kids that you've inspired to dig and look for the truth. And when they find it, they are going to fuck up the Tennessee legislature like a motherfucker. Like,
yes,
they are going to come for them, and they will burn it the fuck down. That's something else I learned about these kids. They don't care. They're like, I don't care. I will take an Uber to the Capitol and burn that shit down. Right? That's what we've learned. So, like Dasan said, it's good that they're learning, but also what we know is that they are truth seekers and they will find it no matter what. So I'm inspired by that.
Yeah, awesome. Kyla, final thoughts.
I would like to say, that I mentioned this in another program, but problems don't get solved by pretending they don't exist. Mm-hmm. But also, I know that you mentioned Candace Owens and No Wins and Morgan Freeman. And one of the things I always think that's really interesting is when they are presented as alternatives to the ideology that I hold, is that somebody can listen to millions of educated Black people talk about their experience and say, this is what I experienced as a Black person. And they can completely ignore and invalidate that person's experience or those thousands or millions of people experience. But they find one Black person that agrees with them. Now, all of a sudden, that person is the expert, and those people have no idea what they're talking about with their experience.
Right. Yeah. Because for goodness sake, if they're okay, then you should be too, right? I have said this, if your response when you hear hundreds and thousands of Black voices talk about white privilege and systemic racism is to quote the one Black voice or the two Black voices in opposition, you might be racist. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying, whether you know it or not, you might be. Coach Hawn, I will let you give the final words before we wrap this up.
Yeah, like I just want to echo what everybody said. Look, our kids are really smart. They're really, and they want to learn and have these difficult conversations. And what are we doing if we don't provide them a space to do so? And they are willing to have these conversations, and they want to, and we're doing them a great disservice academically if we don't have these conversations. And I'm thankful to all of you all for having me on here, and to you, Danny and Kyla, Dasan and Blues, I appreciate you all letting me be here, and
I appreciate
yeah,
you being the catalyst for this, right? Because it cannot be comfortable.
Well, no, this is not the I like to be very comfortable, you know. I like to stay in East Tennessee, and I told Kyla, I said, "Oh Lord, I don't know what I've drug us into here." And she said, "Well, that's okay. I kind of like a wild ride." And I said, "Well, I don't.
Look, we have a saying
yeah.
in the poetry, in the spoken word world, especially if I could reflect back to Carlos Robeson, right? Ride that motherfucker till the wheels fall off, right? That's what we do in our world, because this is the avenue towards healing, whether it's individual, whether it's collectively. These conversations, words accompanied with strong emotion, this is how we get it done, because you have to feel me and I have to feel you in order to know that we are in fact connected. And I do believe that this is how we get it done. So I got to put Blackberry up here. So Blackberry is another poet. She's also an educator. She's a teacher. She says, keep doing you, Coach Hawn. She was my poetry mama a little bit back in the day, even though we're more like sisters in age. But anyway, Teresa Allgood says, I think there are more biracial families in East Tennessee than ever before. Hopefully this will create an environment for more families' voices to be heard. Definitely so. I appreciate everybody. Again, thoughts, prayers, tons of support you all's way. Keep writing, keep spitting. Kyla, Blues, Dasan, right? And Coach Hawn, keep doing what you've always done and putting these babies first, because they count on people like you to help them and mold them and get them ready. So I'm very appreciative to everything about this conversation. Wishing you guys nothing but the best.
Me too.
And I will see you guys later. Y'all know how I end this thing, right?
Yeah.
Be amazing, be light, be love. Peace. Bye, guys.
Bye, Danny.